Go ahead.
Well, I was saying what's interesting about this whole thing, overall, we know the functions within an agency that we've been able to, I would say, produce with some sort of consistency of having a rigid set of principles around automation sequencing and and tying things together. I think when it gets tricky, right, for an agency is as you sort of develop your account base, is trying to eliminate all of the unnecessary steps that are involved in acquisitional onboarding and connective tissue between the different systems. And I think where we sort of shine is the stuff that we've done over and over and over. We've had to do this to stop the repeating process of, I think, creating more work for ourselves than necessary. That's obvious. But when it comes to tying into financial systems and then accounting systems, now it becomes like a real piece of work, because you're not just talking about a few handful of accounts once you get beyond a certain scope. Now you're talking about keeping up with billing, keeping up with accounting, and it's sort of now needs to tie into the structure that we've built. So can you walk through this and kind of?
Yeah, and it's really about, scalability is the key. I mean, once you get we're at over 200 accounts right now. So to manage that, especially with a smaller team, you just have to automate and connect and integrate and all of that. So, but yeah, so this is the agency framework. And I'm going to start, it's built out at the very top at the agency account level, right? So when you sign up for a high level agency account, you then have all the options for SaaS configurator, sub accounts, blah, blah, blah. And the key is more about how they all interconnect and interact with each other that makes things scalable. And so that's what we've mastered, is that scalability, and honestly keep refining. So it's never done. It's constantly, how do we remove this speed bump? How do we automate this other thing? So this framework overview is basically, and you can see the little legend over here of the different softwares involved, people interaction. People are expensive. So how do you automate stupid tasks? Let the humans do human things and let the robots do robot things, right? So that's the philosophy behind this. So you have your agency master account under high level. And then, of course, you integrate all these other softwares to then make it scalable. So whether you go, for phone, high level or Twilio, or email, high level or Mailgun, or any other integration. The other key component was integrating Stripe. So like you mentioned with the financials, managing the financials of 200 plus accounts every single month was beginning to become a nightmare. So we streamlined a lot of that. And then, of course, any other API integrations, you can do that too. And then, of course, we rely heavily on Zapier for things that maybe couldn't be automated within high level, and to talk to other software systems that we use, such as ClickUp. So then you get into your offering also has a heavy weight of what needs to be done and what needs to be automated. So we'll get into that later. But so quick overview. So we have the agency master account, which then, of course, has your SaaS configurator, which then has your services that is linked to high level's built-in auto account launcher. So it'll take your template, which you can see over here, this client template account. So if somebody purchases something from a service that's listed in the SaaS configurator, it auto launches a new client account from that template. So that's a huge factor, time saver. The other thing too is you can then, with it, you're going to build your agency sub account. So you're going to have client sub accounts, plus you're going to have your agency sub account. So your agency sub account is going to be clearly built out very differently. It's for managing clients, managing sales, marketing, leads, all of that kind of stuff for your agency. And this is where just a quick overview of kind of, I don't know if you can see this, it's quite wide, but it's all just the different functionality, and this is still constantly being refined, but using all the functionality built into it. And the key component here is these automations. So those automations, workflows that are then tied into everything else we do. So, right, so here's agency sub account that then has a website that then lists their products and services, that then pulls products from that SaaS configurator in the agency level, which then takes you to a Stripe purchase now, right? And then what happens after they purchase? Well, then you have all these workflows built within high level that fire, notification of purchase, it creates an opportunity. And we even have other agency sub accounts for managing different levels of clients. So, we have our basic account. If they sign up for a lower plan, they go into one sub account for client management. If they purchase a higher account, they go into a different sub account for client management. So it's just integrating all of that. So here's where it kicks off that auto create. So if they do purchase, it then auto creates their account. And this is where it'll down here, I have a client account template mapped out. So this client sub account is then pre-built using that template. So it fires off a snapshot for that client account. And then of course, it just needs a little bit of refining to go in there, but it takes less than 10 minutes of a human's time to go in, double check everything, make sure it's good. And of course, we integrate Stripe here for client payment portal that they can update payment as needed. They're of course also in the settings under company billing is another way for them to update their payment, but that also streamlines if accounts maybe go overdue for their SMS fees, they can go update their own billing.
Well, I was going to say, what's really cool about that is that's just one client sub account strata. You could have multiple stratas there based, and I think that's sort of what we're, we've been sort of emulating, which is we built our subsection of 499s. Now we're building a 199. Like you could build out multiple different things, but
rip and flip, right? So you take you build out the one template for 499 account level. You set it up so that you can rip and flip it for any other price point. So you rip and flip it for a 199 price point or an 899 price point. But all the automations and integrations are all built in already. So it's not like you're having to reinvent the wheel every time you have a new offering.
Correct. And then you could also sub-adjust on each different rip and flip to create subsequences based off of the event that they signed up through. And what's really cool about that, if you think about it from even on a niche layer, you could do it a different, you could set up, we're in obviously a niche that's specific to this, but you could do even different niche layers with different rip and flips. So it's sort of like all repeatable processing based off of the initial onboarding directives through the workflows.
Yeah, and you update your automations. So like in our automations, we have very specific products listed in Stripe. So based on which product they purchase in Stripe, it then launches based on that very specific product. So that it, it just streamlines it, makes it faster.
Now,
the other,
go ahead. So now, obviously, ClickUp is a piece of the puzzle that's substantial, right? And a lot of what I think ends up in the kickoff strategy when we're working with a client, and obviously, now you start to build not necessarily a centralized database, but multiple places where things need to go in ClickUp and post ClickUp, because obviously we use Google Drive. But I think that sort of that layer, I think, is almost part of the special sauce, because a lot of people can't functionally get a lot of, can't.
ClickUp is the execution. It's the execution of what, they paid you for a service. So everything else is all fine and dandy for getting getting a
Correct.
lead in, closing the lead, signing up the lead, but then what, right?
Exactly.
So
This is
that's
a
where
big breakdown.
ClickUp
Yeah.
is the secret sauce, and people get overwhelmed. They get in there and they're like, oh, it's too complicated. I can't figure it out. What we found is working with ClickUp templates is the key. So we, again, that rip and flip concept. So how do we scalability? So how do we set it up to where as soon as a client signs on, we have automations that it creates their sub account in Profit Engines. It also creates a workspace in ClickUp, and based on what they signed up for, launches all the correct tasks within ClickUp to onboard the client, launch everything, build everything, launch everything, and maintain that client. So all of those things are pre-built out in templates. And then on top of it, we utilized automations within ClickUp based on actions taken on tasks. So if there's a task for create ads and a checkbox for Facebook ads is clicked versus Google, it will then task all the correct people for the correct process following that initial task. So this isn't automations just in high level or just in Zapier. This is utilizing automations within each system to then streamline that process. And that's what you're seeing here in these red boxes. And this is more of an example of a white label concept where, the left is the agency needs to do things just to interact with the client, but the right side is a white label provider doing all the ad work and conversing with the agency. So this is a white label build out, but you could do this for, an agency would
It would
take a
just be
hybrid of
different.
both.
Yeah, it would just be different people. I get the concept of really what we've done, more importantly around creating the task layer environment that is templatized so that we're not, as I said from the very beginning, we're not creating more work. All we're doing is basically directing the workflows based off of a subset of sequences that happen as the order comes through.
Correct. Future proofing is, so everything we build at this company, so me and the tech team, we build everything for future proofing. So how can we do this once, set it up so that we can rip and flip it later? So that's, the approach to everything is how do we do that and streamline it, automate it, reduce human workload, all of that gets factored in. But yeah, so those boxes there, yeah.
One of the things I'm going to say is we've kick tested this so hard.
Right. Well, now we're onboarding, hundreds of clients and it's working. It's, stream every now and then we'll have a glitch if something, a box gets missed or something, but then you just have processes. You just have to train your humans to make sure the correct process is followed. So that's the X factor that gets brought into this is how do you then make up for human error too? Taking that into consideration.
Yeah, when you're onboarding 50 plus clients a month, like this has to work. It's just the way it's got it. So I mean, I think that's really one of the interesting things is being forced to work at such high levels of acuity around production work when now there's 5 orders sitting in the box this morning. Like, how does it all get done? And by miracles, it all does. It's just like not miracles, but by what you
automation.
Yeah, but it's true to the fact that what we're seeing though is that there is some human intervention here, that there is training that's involved and there is upkeep that's involved. Not like this is just a miracle of like everything all of a sudden is humpty-dory. I think it's more like everything's set up correctly, everything's put into production based off of niches and or sub account strategies or whatever the white label or non-white label. But then it's more like, okay, now we have to train the humans, and they could be anywhere in the world, right? We obviously have a ton of Filipinos doing a lot of the work here.
Yep.
But I think the question comes down to where those pinch points are, where we have to obviously make sure that there is someone. And I think like the kickoff call, which is a green circle, right? Which is like, okay, there's could be directives there. In our case, like if there's, call center needs to be added, right? Where we want to add our call center so that, the customer's going to get that. Now we have to like add another function in, and it's like, okay, great. And that wasn't discovered during the onboarding until they get to the call center, conversation. Then like, you need that. Okay.
Right. Well, then so then you're streamlining upgrades. So right now we have a lot of clients that sign on at a lower plan, get on their onboarding call, realize they want a bigger plan. So then streamlining, how do you, not only do you have people coming in on that bigger plan on their own, but then you have these upgrading. So how do you make upgrading super easy for them and the team, and factoring that all in? The other thing is, like I said, we're constantly refining, right? So every time I come through and refine these processes, it's looking at, okay, everywhere we have a human engagement, can we automate that in some way, shape, or form? Humans should be on calls chatting with people about people things, is the way I view business operations. And then all of the things that it's just clicking buttons and moving data should all be done by the robots. And so it's constantly refining that. Okay, how do we make this kickoff call more relationship based? How do we make check-in calls more relationship based? And making it so people can focus on time with clients. And so that's the other consideration too.
So let's go back up to the top for a second and kind of walk through like an example of a customer coming through this, and maybe have a few touch points so that we could see like the whole thing in flow and action.
Yeah, so you're actually, all of this stuff up here needs to be built out before you can even have those interactions.
Cool.
So once this overhead is built out, where you start engaging on this flow chart at least is here. Here we get into ads. So here's your ad campaign. If you were running an ad campaign, your ad sets, your individual ads. We integrated UpHex. So this is, if you're running it through UpHex, here's all your ad management. You run your ads, launch your ads. Your landing pages are built out through high-level sites, through funnels. So they click on your ad, go to your funnel. They go to your book now page. They book an appointment with you for a consultation. So this is where you start getting that human engagement, but this is all built out for automation. This particular workflow is an automation focus. So, but here on this book now, then they would engage with a human on their appointment. But everything else that happens around getting them onto that call with a human is all documented here in these workflows that, of course, pretty standard notifications, creating the opportunity, creating appointment reminders leading up to it, all of that. So, and then of course,
even at that stage, we could plug in our call center and it would still be, it would be removed from the client, which is really interesting. So it's like you could completely just basically build this all out with our call center, and another agency who could be, let's say, looking to do this exact model could also be removed from that client.
Yeah, the agency wouldn't even get involved until this kickoff call, right?
Correct.
Where they establish their relationship with the person. But all of this up here can be automated. Even, call center could be calling and booking these calls. And, you could even put options of, don't want to wait for your call, buy now, take them straight to the Stripe page. So there's a whole bunch of ways to streamline this. It's like I said, it's never done. It's constantly refining. But yeah, so that's where you start engaging with your leads, is here on this, consultation, or even not even until this kickoff call if it's all automated.
Yeah, and all those notifications and all the sequences, how much does Slack play in this?
So we use Slack as more of an awareness. And so what we have is notifications if they file a support ticket, if they converse at all within the high-level system, responding to an email or text message. We manage all communication with clients within the high-level system so that we can automate off of it. If it's happening in a separate email account, you can't do that. So we keep everything in the system, in that environment, so we can control it. So we use Stripe more as notifications because it also is helpful. So when our team is heavily engaged with each other. So we talk constantly on Slack. So as soon as a notification rolls into Slack that somebody asks, a support ticket for a specific item, sometimes we'll need to discuss that support ticket before somebody gets back to them. So it's easy that, it pops a notification into Slack. We have a little thread conversation underneath it, discuss the appropriate action, things to be aware of on that account if they're overdue and they need to pay first or whatever. So, we'll have behind the scenes discussions, and then one of our support reps will reach out to them and have a meaningful conversation with that person and have all the information needed, because that pre-conversation happened on Slack. So that's how we use it.
Yeah, well, it's curious to many people, I think, about whether or not to use in all of this. So once this is sort of running like it is as an engine with hundreds of accounts, about creating a support ticketing system. And we've attempted to do it a couple of times, but never found something that would work other than basically a conversation, like you just said in Slack, that would support the issue before we went back to the customer, because it's like you're just adding another layer that doesn't really even need to be there, because that conversation typically is like an internal before it needs to even get out to a customer. And that was a concern.
Right. And the other thing we're building out too, and hoping to have by end of this week, early next week, is a whole entire training center. So, and it's all our white label branded high level, used in the screenshots and videos, and we break down every single aspect of high level and how to use it. And on top of it, we're also building out best practices. So all of the stuff outside of the software functionality of analyzing ads for optimizations, and your ad account got banned, what do you do? So that's for these more SaaS model accounts, like, we're going to go in at that 199 level for those, is having that support system built out for them so they can help themselves. Then, of course, if they get stuck, then they can request that in-person support. We're pitching it as a premium support, but they can get somebody on a call, screen sharing with them, walking them through it. So
yeah, it's always curious to me about where things end up breaking, because we obviously support so many different scenarios, so many different things, and obviously performance is always, customer performance and our performance are somewhat staggered, depending on.
Right. And it comes down to, if you're talking like ad performance, are they running the ads or are we running the ads? And it's just helping them through that process. But it's also a great upsell opportunity. So that's even in our training center, a ton of call to actions and upsells that they can actually upsell themselves and purchase the next level up package, because they don't want to deal with running their own ads.
Ideally, that would,
So it's taken that challenge and turning it into a revenue opportunity for us. And of course, making it as easy as possible for the client to help themselves.
So then check out through Stripe.
Yep. Which then triggers a whole new process for them that streamlines it, makes it super easy. And within a day or two, they're up and running on their bigger plan, with an account manager guiding them through the whole process. Yeah. So,
and the good thing is that, I think this is sort of like, if you look at it from a top level perspective, it's like, this is like, you should start with this and then expand into other products like what we're doing.
This is very foundational. So this is a foundational build out. Of course, on top of this, you're going to have, if you're building this out for another agency, their own quirks and customizations and the way they do things. But this diagram is very foundational.
Yeah. So why don't we back out a little bit? Just so that we can see if we've missed anything, because I think that we covered most of it.
So up here, this top section is the agency high level account. This mid section here is the sub account for the agency, which then gets into this whole purchasing checkout process down here. This red is all ClickUp and the actual execution of what that person purchased. So that's all the red, and then down below is the actual client account, sub account down here.
So it's sort of like again, what I always think of is each time that we add like a product set in. So let's say tomorrow we say, all right, we're going to add XYZ product, right? We modularly base it off of basically replicating an ornamental structure that relates to the product based off of all of the things that need to happen in order for it to be completed. And if it's a white label turn, it would, like, for example, in some cases where we're literally doing the white label services for the white label client, but we've also built out their agency, they literally don't have to do anything but just tell us, hey, add this, and then we add it, and then we build it out, and then we put the task infrastructure.
Correct. So that's like, this is a white label layout where literally all they're doing is interacting with the client, and it can be set up that it's automated as we complete work. It notifies the agency then notifies the client, or we could even automate that if we hook up their ClickUp to their high level, which then auto shoots out a message to the client from their high level account, right? So there's a ton of automation and connection and integration that you can do off of these ClickUp accounts too, based on what actions are taken. So a lot of this can be expanded as well to streamline the whole process, where literally the agency owner, all they have to do is get people to go to that purchase link. And everything from there on out is automated. So they have like one job, get people to walk through that purchase link, and everything else will be taken care of.
Yeah, and again, as I thought from the very beginning, if we even add in the call center, then it's like literally like everything could be done post-production as well.
So then the client of the agency would not have to do anything either. So the call center would then work those leads, book them onto that, we refer to them as the customer. So the client of the agency, so the customer. Yeah. So the call center would be working the customer's leads, booking them onto their appointment, to where the customer would just be completing appointments.
Right, and that's the ideal scenario, right?
Yep.
Where it's really a turn that the agency owner who basically says, I just want to have an agency, but I don't want to do anything. And,
right.
I mean,
nobody wants to deal with people because people suck. So, so this is, you automate that whole thing, and everybody's happy because everybody's winning.
Yes, we've unsucked the agency world.
Yes.
Good. Well, we'll stop with that. That is just an amazing review of everything. I've tried to do this before, but I think where I get stuck is the communication layers that we've built in. And I think the communication layer that you just explained, where the engagement process, where when you have the kickoff call, which is the main green button that we just went through, it's like that's really the pinpoint or the bevel of where anything ends up in our processes. It's like all that starts to cascade those different relationships.
Well, that's where you build your relationship with the client, and then everything from there out can be automated.
Yeah, absolutely. And building it modularly out with other product sets, now you can start to, again, you could put anything in there, whether it would be SEO or email marketing. Like, you just start to add product sets in and just start to cascade them out.
Yep. As they purchase them, it fires off another automation, which then executes, especially with AI now. Yeah. You can even, content generation and everything, incorporate all of that into it.
Yeah, but I think that's what we were just, that's the one thing that I think you and I both agree on. Get the foundation done first. Don't worry about all the crazy stuff yet.
Yeah, you can't do all the other stuff well if you don't have a good foundation. It's just like building a house. You need a good foundation so that everything above it stays standing. So, we've done it ass backwards before, where it's, you're focusing on everything up top, but if your foundation isn't solid, you're just going to screw yourself.
Yeah, and I within Go High Level in the community, I think a lot of agencies get stuck at a certain point where they it sounds easy to do it, but if you haven't wrecked it 1,000 times and broken it into 1 million pieces and then had to rebuild it, you just wouldn't know all these things, because it's
a painful process to learn. Because we've been there.
Yeah, it is. And now we sort of see the light where now our pivoting, we go, okay, well, what do we want to do? Well, let's pivot to X. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to be able to pivot the entire we talked about this in our meeting this morning, which is that we go through cycles within the company, but the cycles are getting much quicker, where we can, instead of it taking 6 months for us to turn the Titanic, I shouldn't say Titanic, to turn the Queen Elizabeth or whatever, to turn the ship so that we can move to another product. So now let's say, hey, we want to take advantage of selling SaaS with call center, and we want to implement it. And now all we have to do is write everything out, get the automation sequenced up. In a couple of weeks, now we can basically now run an ad in Facebook, and we're going to continue changing our direction based off of what advantage we have in the market. And I think that's the key, is
Right.
that ability to adapt with a foundation that's pre-built for functional sustainability.
Yeah, it's easy to build on top of
Yeah.
once you have all this other structure in place. So
Fascinating.
yeah, we're getting down to a couple of weeks to launch a whole new product and offering to the market, and hopefully we'll get it down to less than a week, maybe a day. Like every time you come to me with a crazy idea of, hey, let's do this offer and product and service, I click a couple buttons and launches a whole new subsection of the company that's fully automated and ready to go.
I think the funny thing is, and I think you saw the faces as well, I think maybe 6 months ago, or it had to be beginning of the year, January, somewhere around there. And I said, my goal is to put on 100 accounts per month. And people's faces just melted, because it was like, we were not doing more than 5 or 10 a month.
Right.
And now,
well, because we couldn't comprehend processing that volume the way we were currently processing clients.
yeah.
So, and so we had to adapt.
But now when I say that, people are like, okay.
Well,
sure.
now we're, anytime we have a slow day, we're like, come on, like.
But that's the instant that you realize of like really what functional capabilities that you can do if when the foundations have been built so that the flexibility in the processes have got an open capability to migrate fast, like what you've built and what we've all built over time. It just, you can think differently. Like you can think these things. You can say, what could we do, as opposed to what are our limitations?
Right. How do you make it happen? Like you come to me and you're like, I want to sign, 100 counts a day, and I lose my mind, but I'll figure it out. But it's just thinking through it, and it's possible. It's totally possible.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah.